The new Mechanicum box came through from Games Workshop and I absolutely love these models. In the box we get 29 models in total, 20 of which are tech thralls, which are the lowest basic troops, 6 Thalax which are armed with various special weapons, 2 Chunky Boy Castellax battle automata, and finally one of the Trioros armoured conveyors. I love the design of these so much that I thought it'd be really fun to try my hand at one of those, paint an army in under 24-hour total style videos. What an idiot, honestly. So I started off building the models and they go together really well. The tech thralls are pretty straightforward, there are 5 per sprue and they have a variety of faceplates and left arms that you can mix them around to create some variety in the unit. To build all 20 of these it took me around 2 hours. Cracked on with the building and I found that the Thalax and Castellax were super detailed, but they have so many pieces. Little nozzles and tiny parts, they actually took me ages to get through them. The Trioros was a nice tank to build though, except for there's some really annoying joint lines in the upper part, which are pretty ugly to be honest. Overall it took me about 6.5 hours to build the box and I was feeling okay at that point, not gonna lie. Next up was priming, nothing special here, although I did crank out the rattle can to prime the tank. I just found that rattle cans are a little bit easier for bigger models than the airbrush. For the scheme, I wanted to do something with a metallic blue, silvers and matte black parts. So once the primer dried, it was onto the base coat, which was Vallejo Metal Colour Duraluminium. This is a nice bright silver metal colour, and there's a good reason for this choice. All the steps that we're going to be taking going forwards are going to bring down the brightness of this silver, so we need to start bright because otherwise we're going to have no shine left at the end. The priming and basing in the silver didn't take too long, probably an hour or so, but I was starting to feel a bit worried about the next step to be honest. A really simple way to make coloured metallics is to use a contrast or speed paint over a silver metallic paint. So for the blue metallic I chose Alkalian Green, which makes this slightly turquoise tone. Now that I was properly into the actual painting of these models, I really started to not enjoy this whole challenge thing. Painting contrast over 29 models was just not fun at all, and I found myself slowing down and getting distracted really easily. I cracked on though. For the Trioros I used cling film to make a simple mask around the rear areas of the tank at the back so I could keep them silver while airbrushing the Alkalian Green over the rest of the model to speed things up a little bit. With all the blue armour done, I quickly airbrushed the left arms of the tech thralls with Tamiya XF76, which is a pale grey-green in prep for some skin tones, and honestly at this point I really wasn't enjoying myself, so I just made the decision. I wasn't bothered about the challenge anymore, and in fact by trying to paint so many models in a big batch with the hope that it would be an efficient way to get the army box finished quickly, I'd actually caused myself to burn out. I really just did not want to paint any more of these models. So I made the decision I was just going to paint a single model, get some fast gratification in. So I picked up this one Castellax and decided this is the model, I'm going to finish painting this one to completion, and as soon as I made that decision I felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could just relax and enjoy painting, which is what it's all supposed to be about. So the next step was to block in any matte black areas. I picked out some of the areas on the chest and some of the details on the weapons and the undersection of these shoulder guards. Next up I wanted to break up the metals and create some interest, so I used snakebite leather over the canopy and some of the parts of the weapon to turn the metallics into a nice brassy colour. Again, using contrast to create coloured metals is just really fun and easy. With those colours down, I went and added a couple of transfers to the shoulder pads. I used 2 products to do transfers, Micro Salt and Micro Set. I used the blue one first to help the transfer sit well on them, and then the red one to soften it up and make the transfer look more natural. I then gave these a brushed on coat of gloss varnish to protect them from the next step, weathering. One of the reasons I chose metallic blue for this scheme was because I knew that the weathering I wanted to use was going to have a lot of rust, and also a dusty desert base. So I wanted something that would contrast nicely with the orange and the off-white. Before we get to those, the first step, as almost always in the weathering journeys my models go through, is Streak and Grime. The colour I'm using is Streak and Grime for Interiors by AK Interactive, and I'm applying it straight from the pot with a large brush onto the model. A lot of people ask, can you apply it with a brush or with an airbrush, and yeah, either way works fine. Once it's been coated, I take a cotton bud with some white spirits and roll it across the model to reduce the grime. Again, the question I get asked is how long do I leave it between applying the grime and removing it? And the answer is not very long, and pretty much just putting it on and then removing it straight away. There is an argument that you could use less to begin with so that you have less removal, but I enjoy the simplicity of just slapping it on everywhere and reducing it back like this. Once we've done that, we're going to take a dry cotton bud and roll them across the model to mop up any excess and leave a nice grubby, grimy look to the model. When we do a streak and grind reduction like this, it does cause us to lose some of the definition in the model. One of my favourite ways to bring that back is to use a black enamel wash. One of the benefits of an enamel wash over acrylics is that it has a much lower surface tension, so it more easily flows into the recesses and away from the highlights without staining them. So we can load up a brush and wash it into any areas with lots of details like cables or skulls or mechanical parts, and it automatically brings back that definition. For the bronze parts, I wanted to add some verdigris, obviously. Now, verdigris comes in lots of different shades, but I want to go with a more blue tone to help tie the whole overall look of the armour into that metallic blue colour. So for this, I chose the blue-grey wash from the AK Wargame Wash paint range. This is another enamel wash, so we can apply it liberally over all the bronze areas and use a cotton bud to remove excess, or even use white spirits if we've gone way too much. With that done, we can then work on to the next weathering part, the rust. I'm using the AK Interactive Enamel Wargame Wash in the extreme rust colour this time. This contrasts really nicely with the matte black and the metallic blue, and it's a really easy paint to use. We just apply in small dabs using an old brush, and that will flow nicely around rivets and into recesses to give a nice realistic look. When I'm painting rust, I try to think of two things. One is where it would accumulate, so around rivets and on edges, things like that, and two, where it would streak and run. And I try and emulate that with my painting. For the base, I applied AK Terrain's dry ground to all of the base and a little of the feet of the model. Applying it to the feet helps to tie the model into its environment. Usually I would add some extra bits and pieces in there like tufts, but I really want the base to look like a proper desolate desert base. I actually applied the dry ground texture before I did the verdigris, but it doesn't really matter too much in what order you apply these. Once the dry ground had dried, I just wanted to add some extra variation to the dusty colours, so I used AK Liquid Enamel pigments in the dust and light European earth colours. These paints are great alternatives to using pigment powders for lighter applications, as they come already with a solution for applying and fixing in place. I applied these pretty liberally on the base, especially any recesses and also on the lower legs. If you did want to have a heavier application of dust, you would use pigment powders or multiple layers of these liquid pigments. With all the weathering and base done, the last thing with these lenses. I started off by painting them in black, and then used Sons of Horus Green to paint a rough circle in the upper right quarter, followed by a swoosh that goes through the other 3 quarters. Next, I mixed up some Moot Green into the Sons of Horus Green and painted within those same areas from the previous step, but leaving some of it on show. I then followed the same technique but with straight Moot Green, and then again but adding some Ivory from AK Interactive into the Moot Green. You can see this technique in my 3-minute gem video here. Once those had dried, I gave them a coat of gloss varnish just to give them some extra shine. And the very last thing was to paint the base rim in black. And done! What do you think? First of all, I want to say a massive hats off to all those absolute legends who do complete the 24-hour box challenges, because it's unbelievable that you can, paint a full box of minis in less than 24 hours. Secondly, I think one of the big things that I took away from this is that if you're not enjoying something halfway through a process, you can stop and readjust, change your approach, and really find out what works for you and what you enjoy doing. If you're not enjoying something, you don't have to keep slogging at it. You can take a break, rethink things, come back to it with fresh eyes, and just reevaluate why you're doing it and how you're doing it to find the way that works for you. Going forward, I think I've found that really I just want to paint a single model at a time, even if that means I can batch the start of an army. I might want to, halfway through when it gets down to the nitty gritty details, switch to individually finishing off one model at a time. I think personally that's what will work for me. Obviously, whatever works for you, you do that. That is one of the joys of miniature painting. There's a variety of different ways to enjoy it, and there's no wrong way. Whatever works for you is what's the best way. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hope you learned something along with me in this video, and see you next time. Bye!